From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
Even with the unemployment rate low in Rhode Island, there is a need. The Rhode Island Community Food Bank serves 53,000 people each month, while Meals on Wheels provides food to nearly 1,200 seniors each weekday. On this Thanksgiving week, we sit down with the CEO of the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, Andrew Schiff, and the head of Meals on Wheels Rhode Island, Megan Grady. Then, with Providence Place turning 20 years old, the mayor of Providence wants to re-examine the tax break the mall has with the city and his thoughts on where the mall is headed in the era of online shopping. On the second half of Newsmakers, Ted Nesi's interview with Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program, Eyewitness News reporter Ted Nesi, Andrew Schiff from the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, and Meg Grady from Meals on Wheels Rhode Island. It's good to have you both on the program. Welcome back to you both. And we are taping this on a Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so I should say happy Thanksgiving to you and to everyone out there as well. Andrew, I'm going to start with you. As I said in the open of the show there, look, the economy's strong, the unemployment rate is low. Has that translated into less demand from your perspective?
Somewhat. We've seen some folks who are working and certainly are doing better than just after the recession. But what we're surprised by is that there are still so many people in need. We're serving 53,000 people each month.
Mm-hmm. And what does that need look like? What's a demographic? I know you just did a survey. We might get into it a little bit more later in the show, but you did a survey with Brown University. What does the need look like?
When we look at who's in line at a food pantry in Rhode Island, it's mostly senior adults or parents with young children. That's 2/3 of the households that we're serving. And when we look at the families with children, they're headed by a working adult. So that's been the change with the economy. More folks are working, but they're not earning enough to be able to afford basic household expenses, including food.
What does that say about the Northeast in living here?
It's just so expensive.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we found is people are making such difficult trade-offs, deciding, do I purchase food or do I pay the utility bill? And that's very real right this time of year.
Before we bring Megan and Andrew, is the experience of the food bank in this economic recovery different from previous ones? Because I was struck by something you put out recently, and you still aren't back to the pre-recession level of use of your food banks.
We aren't, and that's a great concern, first of all, because if there's another recession coming up, we're going to start off at a much higher point. 53,000 people a month is way higher than we were before the recession in terms of the number of people we're serving. I think a lot of it does have to do with folks are at low wage jobs, and the cost of living, particularly housing, is so high, people just can't make it, pay all the bills, and afford the food they need to feed their families.
Meg, the same question to you that I asked to Andrew. And it seems like there's some overlap here. You have the elderly population that is serving, that the community food bank is serving, but that's your focus, the elderly population. What is the demand like for Meals on Wheels right now?
So today we are serving 1,200 meals across the state of Rhode Island, 5 weekdays. But when we look forward into the future, we're projecting that our population is only getting older. Mm-hmm. We're looking at adding 100,000 seniors by 2030, and by 2040, 1 in 4 Rhode Islanders is going to be 65 or older. Mm. So I think that really speaks to our growing need around senior nutrition and really making sure that we have strategies in place to be able to meet this growing need.
Go ahead.
And something we were talking about before the show, Meg, you serve 1,200, but there is more demand than that even now, right? If there were more people who would be glad to have Meals on Wheels if you had the capacity.
So we're receiving phone calls every week, between 30 and 60 phone calls. Not all of the seniors that call are eligible for our services because there are some requirements. You have to be homebound. You need to have need assistance either shopping or preparing for your food. But yeah, our phone is ringing, and so there is very much a need. And when you look at who Andrew's serving, our data very much lines up in that seniors, a vulnerable population, need the support. And what we do at Meals on Wheels helps seniors stay in their homes.
You took the job 5 months ago in June, mm-hmm. right? So still new to it. I think if I remember right, you came from the YWCA. Right? Was there anything now 5 months in, anything that is surprising you about the Meals on Wheels program and what you're experiencing firsthand?
So I knew that joining Meals on Wheels would be a rewarding experience, but every single day I get to either meet a new senior, a new one of our volunteers, and we really can't do it without our volunteers. There have been so many people that have shared stories with me about how their volunteer position helped them save a senior's life, or how it's been such a rewarding experience and renewed their energy in their own lives. And so I think that every day, to be able to hear about how people are together for seniors has really been an incredible joy.
Because the visit is almost a wellness check along with providing a meal, right?
Absolutely. So in addition to the midday meal, it's a safety check and it's also an opportunity for socialization. 92% of the seniors we serve say that Meals on Wheels helps them stay in their home. And when we ask seniors about our services, we get pages and pages of comments about how much joy the volunteer driver brings to their life.
Andrew, the Trump administration has proposed cutting the federal food assistance program known as SNAP. People know it as food stamps. I don't want to get into how that all works with the utilities and all that, but just want to sort of get to the end game. I've been reading that the estimates would impact more than 3 million people nationwide. Do you know how many people in Rhode Island that would affect, and are you, I don't know, bracing for impact in any way?
We're worried about the impact. So one of the cuts that's proposed would cut, we have 148,000 people currently enrolled in SNAP. It would immediately take 11,000 people off the program, including 5,000 children. Another cut, another proposal, would reduce benefits for 38,000 people currently on the program. I mean, if folks have less money to be able to buy food at the supermarket, what are they going to do? They're just going to turn to food pantries for help.
Can you shoulder that extra
I don't
volume?
think so.
You can't.
Well, you think about the volume, the number of people who are going to be coming to us. We're near capacity now. It would be almost impossible for us to meet that need.
So what are you doing? Are you doing anything to prepare for, and what is the timeline? I don't have a full grasp on when this could take effect.
So, realistically, the way it will work is that one day there will be an announcement that it's in effect, and the next day there will be a lawsuit.
Okay.
And the ACLU or another organization will sue, and things will get tied up, at least temporarily, in court. I'm looking at these cuts probably becoming real and going through in late spring. That's what I would assume.
So you're still expecting it in the near term to
We
actually
are,
happen.
yeah, it's still this year.
So something since from covering both your organizations in the past, something I do find people don't necessarily understand is that I think a lot of people think you are effectively government agencies that have a sort of a, you get whatever is needed to take care of people, et cetera. And as you've both said to me in the past, that is not the case, that you do get some support. Can you sort of spell out, Meg and then Andrew, where you do get support from the government, but then how much you also rely on private sources of funding to accomplish your mission?
Absolutely. So 57% of Meals on Wheels funding comes through the state and the federal government. Primarily the Older Americans Act that was signed into law by President Johnson as a part of the Great Society reforms. But then after that 57%, we're looking at 8% in healthcare reimbursement, seniors that are receiving Meals on Wheels as a benefit through their insurance plans, 11% client donations. We have a voluntary suggested client donation of $3 per meal. We're only collecting about $1.90 on each one of those suggested donations. So the question is, are seniors not making that donation because they can't? And then fundraising. The rest of our budget is made up of fundraising. That's about 25%. We are on target to raise about $550,000 this year to support our services.
Andrew, same question. To where does the government help, and then where are you having to find the money in other ways?
Right. Well, not just money, food too. So we receive some food that we distribute from the USDA, high quality, really good food. We're lucky to have that program. And in the beginning, food banks, all the food that was coming to food banks was donated from supermarkets and grocery stores. They've become much more efficient in terms of managing their inventory. They have less surplus food to donate. So we have to purchase food in order to be able to distribute 12 million pounds of food a year. And it's donor dollars that allow us to purchase that food and serve everybody in need.
Andrew, we touched on the poll, the survey, I should say, that you conducted along with Brown University. You gave us some of the highlights off the top of the show. One of the numbers I found surprising, you brought up 69% of the households with children have an employed adult in the household. So they're working, they're just not making enough money, and they rely on the community food bank. How do you use, there's a lot, this is a 74-page survey. How do you use all this data at the food bank?
One of the other critical things that we found is that the population served by the food bank has seriously compromised health. 45% told us that they had poor or fair health versus good, or excellent health. And there were very high rates of illness and chronic disease, including diabetes and hypertension. So we have to make sure that the food that we provide to people in need is the highest quality, most nutritious food possible. And that sets a high bar for us.
So both of you, people might be listening, they might want to, they want to help, might not know, well, what's the best way I can do it? So, simplest terms, if someone wants to get involved, wants to do something that benefits your organization, Meg, first, what's the best thing they could do for Meals on Wheels?
They could make a donation. The inclusive cost of our meal is $7.77 a meal. So if you don't know where to start there.
Okay, Andrew, same question.
Same thing, donate online at rifoodbank.org. That would really help. And when you go there, you can find out about all the other ways that the public can help us this time of year. Donate food too by coming to the food bank.
Yeah, I was going to say, we do see a lot of baskets and things out sometimes at the grocery store with your logo on it and everything. Are there certain, if someone might walk in a grocery store and say, maybe I'll pick something extra up and put it in the basket. What foods do you want the most of?
Think about what a parent can quickly turn into a meal. Canned food that's healthy canned vegetables, peanut butter, anything that's going to quickly make a meal. That's what we need.
We're going to take a break on the show. What we're going to do, if you're looking to donate, we're going to put a link to both the Meals on Wheels Rhode Island and to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank on our Newsmakers page on the WPRI.com website. So go there if you'd like to make a donation. When we come back, we're going to have Ted Nesi's interview with Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. It's been 20 years since the Providence Place Mall first opened for business, and as many of you may remember, it was a controversial development. For his report, Ted Nesi sat down with Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza to discuss the mall and the sizable tax break it gets from the city in a deal signed by then Mayor Buddy Cianci. Here's Ted's interview with Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza.
Mayor, thanks for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
So, as I told you, we are looking sort of at the mall, past, present, and future, 20 years since they opened in 1999. First, I'm just curious your kind of big picture thoughts. You're the mayor of Providence. Providence Place looms over the skyline here. It predated you, but how do you think about Providence Place as an economic development project, and did it work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly glad that it's here, and I go to the mall all the time, catch a movie, Christmas shopping, you spend time at the mall. And so I'm glad that we have it, and it's done a lot to bring people together. The whole basin around Water Place, it's connected to what's going on in the mall. Whenever there are gatherings over at the State House, there are events outside, people can have a place to walk in. It's much nicer having that than having a big empty parking lot. So, I definitely appreciate that it's there. In the past 20 years, I think we've, as a whole, changed the way that we think about malls, though, right? A mall in and of itself isn't the economic driver that you need to have in order for your city to thrive. Now, it's part of the mix, and it's one important component, but there's so much else that goes into creating a vibrant, thriving city. And so I see the mall more as a gateway. I see it as a gateway that connects downtown to the Woonasquatucket neighborhood behind it. I see it as a gateway that brings people into the city and connects them to other opportunities and other interesting things that are happening. But I'm certainly glad that it's there. And as a city, I think it's in all of our interests to make sure that they're as successful and thriving as possible. With the understanding that it's not the silver bullet that's going to solve all of the challenges we have in the city. That's the wrong way to go about thinking about malls. But I think it's an important part of the mix.
Are you concerned at all? We had Nordstrom, your predecessor. That was a big deal to go and convince Nordstrom to come out as an initial anchor. They've departed the mall. Now Boscov's is in there, and we both know what's going on with retail, with Amazon and everything. do you worry when you have such a very large and prominent building that is tied to an industry in such flux? Do you worry at all about the health of the mall?
I mean, the day the Apple Store leaves, that's when I'm really worried. That's when you know there's a problem with the mall. Until that day comes, I guess this is just part of the process. JCPenney was in there previously as well. And they're a landlord. It's their job to go out and get tenants, and I'm sure that they're doing what they can to do that. My job is to make sure that they're good partners with the city, and that we support them wherever we can, and that we think not just transactionally about our relationship with the mall, but think partnership and transformation-wise. Again, they're an important gateway. I see them as a bridge connecting downtown to the Woonasquatucket neighborhood. We have some really big plans for Woonasquatucket and for Olneyville, right? That's the area behind the mall. Usually you don't think of that area as downtown, but it's closer to the heart of downtown than many places that physically are downtown. And so, I see the relationship with the mall as a partnership one, and I want them to succeed so that they can be the bridge to connect people to new opportunities.
Do you or your advisors have ideas on how to make that gateway? Are there things you think the mall could do that would knit that part of the city together more than maybe it is currently along with the other projects you have going on?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we released this big plan for the Woonasquatucket recently, and it's just physically really difficult to get from, say, the train station to the backside of the mall. Sometimes people just want to walk down the river, and it's just impossible to do. You got to cross a major street, then you get behind the mall, and it's sort of dark and dreary. There's a lot that we can do in partnership so that the space under the mall and then behind the mall, that feels connected and almost inviting for people to explore, beyond downtown and get out into the neighborhood.
One thing that's come up as I've told people I was working on a Providence Place story is safety. I have to admit I think this has come more from people who live outside of Providence than in Providence, but the sense that, has it become less safe at the mall? They see when there's a big headline about some kind of incident there, something like that. How do you view that, and do you think that's overblown? Is it something that ever comes up with your public safety officials?
So of course we talk about that, and we coordinate with security at the mall very, very closely. Anytime, especially today, anytime that there's a large gathering, you worry about, what could potentially happen. So of course we talk about it. Whether there have been more incidents now than there have been in the past, I mean, I can't say. It's a really small number of public safety events that occur. But we want to be very careful, because when those things happen, it's on all the news, it's on all of social media now, and it scares people off, right? Even if it's not the reality, the perception is that people shouldn't come to the mall, and certainly we don't want that to be the impression. I shop there all the time. I know hundreds of people who shop there all the time and have never had an incident. And we just want folks to know, whether you're from Providence or outside of Providence, you can come to the mall and know that the police department is coordinating with security there. We have a constant presence, and it's a safe place to be. So I can certainly say you are just as safe in Providence Place Mall as you are in any mall, any urban mall throughout the country.
So I also want to talk about the mall and its property taxes. Your predecessor, multiple moons ago, Buddy Cianci, did sign a tax treaty in the 1990s after a lot of debate. And I got the information from your finance folks, in the mall this year will pay only $900,000 to the city of Providence. On its assessed value, at least, it would be paying many millions. Looking back, does that, with all the financial challenges the city had, does that frustrate you, or do you think you kind of understand why that decision was taken when the mall was being put together?
Yeah, I don't want to play Monday morning quarterback. If I was in that position, who knows what any one of us would have done. What I try to focus on is what we have now. And as you mentioned, their TSA, their tax abatement agreement, is going to end in about 10 years, and then it's going to balloon to something like $20 million. From where it is now, they're going to be paying about $900,000. So we've begun some conversations with them, and we've essentially told them, look, we want you to be aware of this balloon payment that's going to come due after it expires. We're willing to partner with you so that we can gradually get there in the next 10 years. And then it'll be either my job or the next mayor's to negotiate an extension of that tax agreement. But them hitting that cliff where then it becomes unsustainable is something they need to be aware of. We're about 10 years out from that point, so now is about the time that we should be thinking about it, they should be thinking about it, and hopefully come up with some kind of solution so that they don't hit that cliff that knocks them out.
The mall has hired some lobbyists to begin this process. I'm just curious, did your staff proactively approach the mall, or did the mall come to City Hall and say, hey, we need to start talking about this?
That's a good question, and I can't say for sure. I do know that several years ago, I sat down with them, and I believe they had either a new ownership group, or when I first became mayor.
Yes, they have gone through multiple corporate changes.
Yeah, something like that. So I've met with the group at least twice over the years, but we've talked about it internally as well. We look at all of our tax agreements, and we want to make sure that we're monitoring them, and at the same time that we give folks a heads up. When I met with their new management group, I'm not sure the extent to which they were aware of this cliff that they were going to hit. But certainly from that conversation, we invited them to begin these conversations with us so that hopefully in the interim we can come up with something that will work even better for the city over the next 10 years and would potentially work for the mall beyond that.
So it sounds like you'd like to see if you could end the provisions of the current tax treaty early, maybe bring up the payments now, but maybe in exchange so they have an incentive. It would make it not quite the cliff they're looking at right now at the end of the current one.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, if their payment's going to balloon to $20-something million, that will likely knock them out of business. And whoever's the mayor in 10 years would probably not want that to happen. But instead of just waiting 10 years, maybe the idea is they increase their payments over the next 10 years, and after 10 years, it doesn't go back down to what it is now, but it's less than that $25 million. So it's potentially a way that they can pay more up front and realize some savings down the road.
That was Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza. Ted Nesi's interview with him for his report on the 20th anniversary of the Providence Place Mall. Can't believe it's 20 years old, Ted. One of the things that struck me from your story was, and the mayor was very candid about this, he said, boy, we're in trouble if the Apple Store leaves. The Apple Store pulled in more than $40 million, if I remember right, of business, and was that 2018? 17, which is more than double what Nordstrom's pulled in on the last year that it was there. And look, just like any store, people can buy iPhones, they can buy iPads anywhere, particularly online. Why is the Apple Store at Providence Place Mall getting so much foot traffic?
I think Apple, I think part of it is probably that Apple, because they sell higher priced items, people wanna, same way I think some people still struggle to buy a car online, right? You want to test drive something, you're putting that much money in. Not that an Apple product's a car, but it is. Those phones can be $1,000 now. People want to go see it up close. I think the Genius Bar, the Apple concept where you can go and get things repaired, that draws people in. If you have a problem with your phone, you go. And that's, all the experts I talked to said, whether it's Apple or a different thing, that's what the mall needs, and that's what's so important for that mall or any other mall, which is you need things that get people through the door, and just basic retail is not doing the job as well as it used to because, as you said, because of online shopping. So anything that can get more people to come physically to the mall is what they're going to need to continue to survive, or else they could go the way of, Swansea Mall.
So what does that mean? More experience at the mall potentially 10 years down the road? We're talking more restaurants, we're talking more activities to do? Is that what it could
all
look
of that,
like? I mean, it's all a guessing game,
yeah,
I know.
Things other malls have done, I was told, museums, medical offices, or corporate offices as well.
What about residences?
Housing, residences. Okay. As you said, restaurants, especially unique restaurants, or restaurants that aren't in every shopping center in America, those kind of things. Some places are doing virtual skydiving, all sorts of different things to try to get people into the mall. Whereas in 1999, when it opened, you just had to go to the mall. When I was a Cub reporter and I was making a lot of money, I worked a side job at Borders, right? Yeah. And Borders is gone because people could buy their books more easily.
So you've covered a lot of economic development things in Rhode Island, including 38 Studios, which didn't go so hot. We think about the Pawsucks that are now heading to Worcester. But the Providence Place Mall, even though there was a lot of hand-wringing about it for a decade when they were planning it, it was an economic development program initiative that worked in Rhode Island. What's the difference between the Providence Place Mall and all the ones that have failed?
Well, I think a couple things. I think the mall was just a smarter deal, right? I think 38 Studios was just, in retrospect, sort of ridiculous, right? You know, you're putting that much state money behind a very, very speculative enterprise. The mall was doing retail. There was going to be a physical asset at the other end. And the Almond administration and the General Assembly were fairly conservative about how much sales tax was needed for that. But then I also think it's just political leadership. You know, the polling at the time showed 66% of Rhode Islanders opposed the mall, and Governor Almond and the Assembly went forward because they thought it was something
Could you see that happen
needed.
today, in the political climate today?
Mark Batingen had a column in the Journal this morning pointing out that if the polling had been driving the mall decision as it did with Paw Sox, there wouldn't be a Providence Place mall. So people have to think about that too, and it's something for political leaders to think about. The public doesn't always know what it wants, what it will want once it sees what's in front of it. So I think, but everyone I talked to from the administration who worked on the administration said the mall worked.
Don't miss Ted's excellent piece on the 20th anniversary of the Providence Place Mall on WPRI.com. As I said at the top of the show, we're taping this on a Wednesday, so happy Thanksgiving to all of you from everyone here at Eyewitness News. Ted and I will see you next week on Newsmakers.